365 Folk Horror Stories. Ghost Knocking on the Door. Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Nick. Today, I bring you a spine-chilling true folk ghost story from a rural folklore. If you are obsessed with creepy supernatural stories, click subscribe to this channel. An age-old rural saying has been passed down across China's mountain villages for hundreds of years.
Roam lonely mountain back roads deep past midnight, and you'll inevitably cross paths with unholy, otherworldly entities. This ominous warning rings especially true on jagged cliffside mountain trails after dark. Even skittish stray dogs will alter their routes far away from these frosty, isolated slopes once midnight rolls around.
Wang Jianjun was a veteran long-haul truck driver with 5 full years navigating winding provincial mountain routes. Cocky and wholly dismissive of all ghost-related superstitions, he knew every sharp bend and hazardous downhill stretch like the lines on his own palm. He intentionally scheduled most of his long-distance deliveries for the dead of night.
Convinced late-night driving meant no roadside traffic patrols, fewer tedious inspections, and far fewer unexpected travel delays. The fateful accident fell on the 28th day of the 12th lunar month, just days ahead of China's Lunar New Year. Lead gray storm clouds hung heavy over jagged mountain ridges.
Bitter alpine wind howled through narrow valleys, and heavy snow lingered in the frigid air, ready to blanket the rugged wilderness at any moment. After wrapping up a cross-provincial delivery hundreds of miles away, Jianjun hurried home, desperate to arrive before New Year's Eve and reunite with his wife and young son for the holiday.
The perilous mountain roadway was absurdly narrow. Sheer craggy rock walls loomed on one side, while a vertigo-inducing, hundreds-foot-deep rocky abyss plummeted downward on the other. 2 straight days of non-stop driving had drained his stamina, leaving his eyelids heavy with exhaustion.
He fought relentlessly against drowsiness behind the wheel, his vision blurring sporadically with every passing mile. As he rounded a sharp hairpin turn, his truck's blazing headlights sliced through the murky, snow-dusted gloom and locked onto a hunched human figure shuffling dead center on the ice-glazed road.
It was an elderly grandma wrapped in a worn, faded sky, blue cotton-padded jacket, her weight resting entirely on a gnarled, hand-carved wooden cane as she trudged forward slowly. A surge of primal terror jolted through Jianjun's body. He wrenched the steering wheel to swerve aside and slammed his foot onto the brake pedal.
The truck's tires let out an ear-piercing screech against slippery ice, skidding dozens of feet out of control before slamming violently into the rough stone mountainside with a thunderous crash. Stunned and woozy from the brutal collision, Jianjun took several disoriented seconds to regain his senses.
He scrambled out of the driver's cabin with a hammering heart and froze at the cliff edge. The old woman lay crumpled and motionless atop fresh snow, her wooden cane discarded beside her lifeless body, right on the razor-thin brink of the deadly drop. His knees buckled with sheer panic as he stumbled over to check her vital signs.
Her skin was ice-cold, and no breath escaped her nostrils. She was dead on the spot. This remote mountain spot was desolate beyond measure, with not a single farmhouse or hamlet for miles around, and his cell phone showed a dead zone with 0 cellular service. Crippling panic clouded Jianjun's mind, fixated on one selfish, desperate thought. No living soul could ever find out about this fatal accident.
He'd scraped together every spare cent and taken high-interest loans just to buy his cargo truck, the sole financial pillar supporting his entire household. If local authorities uncovered the crash, his truck would be impounded,
and ruinous compensation fees would plunge his wife and child into abject poverty.
Gritting his teeth against the stinging winter wind, he dragged the stiff corpse across frosty snow toward the cliff's precipice. He peered down into the pitch, black, bottomless gorge far below, frigid draughts roaring upward from the unseen depths. Under his breath he mumbled a feeble excuse to ease his gnawing guilt. "Don't blame me for this fate."
Why would an elderly lady wander alone into these barren, freezing mountains deep in the dead of night? Shutting his eyes to avoid watching the fall, he shoved the corpse along with its cane over the cliff, sending both tumbling down into the unlit abyss. Back at his truck, he grabbed frayed rags soaked with frozen snow and scrubbed away every scratch on the front bumper.
Next, he swept all footprints off the snow-covered pavement to erase all evidence, then hopped into the cab and sped downhill without a single backward glance. Pale dawn spilled over mountain peaks by the time he pulled into his courtyard. His wife instantly spotted his deathly ashen complexion and asked what was wrong.
He hastily lied that slippery, icy mountain roads had terrified him. Swamped with last-minute New Year preparations, she brushed off his odd behavior and returned to sorting festive groceries, completely unaware of the unspeakable crime her husband had committed. Yet from that dreadful day on, crushing guilt and unrelenting paranormal dread plagued Jianjun day and night.
He constantly felt invisible eyes staring at him through every window, and the haunting sight of the old woman sprawled on the snowy cliffside replayed endlessly behind his closed eyelids whenever he tried to rest. On the second night of the Lunar New Year, shortly after the family finished their warm, festive supper, 4 slow, deep, hollow knocks boomed against the thick timber courtyard gate. Thunk.
Thunk, thunk, thunk. 4 measured raps that sent icy goosebumps crawling up Jianjun's spine. Centuries of local folk wisdom drew a clear line between the living and spirits. Living guests always knock 3 times to announce arrival, and only vengeful ghosts from the afterlife strike 4 knocks. His wife glanced toward the yard and urged him, "We've got visitors here for New Year greetings."
Hurry and open the gate. Fear clamped tight around Jianjun's throat, his voice trembling as he stammered his refusal. That can't be right. No sensible person would drop by late on the second day of the holiday. The mysterious knocking cut off abruptly the moment his words died away. His wife huffed in annoyance,
Rolling her eyes at his inexplicable paranoia before heading into the kitchen to wash dishes, leaving Jianjun rigid on the sofa, his clothes soaked cold with nervous sweat, utterly convinced a wrathful spirit lingered just beyond the wooden gate. Starting that cursed evening, without a single missed night, exactly at midnight sharp, those same 4 somber knocks echoed against the courtyard gate.
Tormented by mounting dread, Jianjun refused to turn off any household lamp after sunset. Each night, he sat tensely near the door for hours, trembling violently at the faintest rustle or distant wind from outdoors. His wife grew increasingly suspicious of his erratic, sleep-deprived state and repeatedly pressed him to reveal his troubles. But he stubbornly hid his murderous secret.
The eerie haunting escalated drastically on Lantern Festival night. The 4 knocks boomed far louder than ever before, each impact carrying the distinct dull thud of a wooden cane hitting hardwood. Pushed past his breaking point after months of sleepless torture, Jianjun snatched a heavy iron garden shovel leaning against the wall and ripped the courtyard gate wide open in a burst of frantic rage.
The entire yard stood empty, only loose winter snow swirling wildly across the ground amid bitter wind. He exhaled a shaky breath of relief and prepared to close the gate, until his peripheral vision caught a wooden object propped against the courtyard's stone foundation. A rough handmade walking cane, an exact duplicate of the one the deceased grandma had carried the night of the accident.
Shock made the shovel slip out of his numb hands, clattering loudly onto frozen ground. He scrambled madly back inside and bolted his bedroom door shut. His wife dissolved into terrified sobs, begging him to spill the horrible truth. Crushed under endless mental torment, Jianjun finally confessed every gruesome detail of the accident and his cowardly decision to dump the victim's body over the cliff.
Shaken to her core upon hearing the full story, his wife wept bitterly. "You've committed an unforgivable sin." Her poor family must be distraught with grief, searching day and night across the mountains for their missing elder. Miraculously, the nightly ghostly knocks vanished entirely that night.
Relieved the haunting had seemingly ended, Jianjun lay down to rest until his young son's sudden, terrified wails split the house's quiet. He sprinted straight into the child's bedroom to find the little boy sitting upright in bed, his tiny, trembling finger pointing toward the window, while whimpering through streams of tears. "Grandma."
"There's an old grandma outside our window." Jianjun's blood turned to ice the moment he lifted his gaze to the glass. Pressed flat against the frosty window pane was the dead grandma's gaunt, sorrowful face, her hollow eyes fixed unblinkingly into the room, her mouth drooping downward as if weeping endless grief and resentment.
He let out a deafening scream, grabbed a solid wooden stool and hurled it full force at the window, shattering the glass into countless jagged fragments. Once the pane split apart, no ghostly figure remained outdoors. Even so, the boy kept crying inconsolably, saying the grandma's freezing cold fingers had stretched through the broken gap and brushed against his small palm.
At dawn the very next morning, a broken and remorseful Jianjun walked voluntarily into the local police station and gave a full confession, detailing the fatal accident and how he'd discarded the elderly woman's corpse down the remote cliff. Law enforcement officers escorted him back to the mountain pass.
Following his directions, search crews rappelled down the steep cliff face and recovered the victim's remains right at the drop-off spot he'd named. Subsequent police investigation uncovered the old lady's identity. She was a lifelong resident of nearby Zhang village and had set off on the 28th day of the 12th lunar month to visit her eldest daughter and beloved grandson in another county.
Wang Jianjun received a prison sentence for negligent homicide and corpse abandonment. Locked behind cold iron bars, the deceased grandma haunted his dreams every single night, without fail. In every nightmare, she stood alone amid snow-blanketed mountains in her faded blue cotton coat, leaning silently on her wooden cane, never speaking a word, and only staring at him with sorrowful eyes.
He fully understood an immutable truth. Every mortal sin and karmic debt must eventually be repaid. He asked a trusted friend to deliver a remorseful message to the victim's bereaved family, solemnly vowing that once released from prison, he would spend the rest of his life guarding her tomb and tending her grave until his dying day.
Still, one spine-prickling question lingered in the back of his haunted mind. Would those 4 cursed midnight knocks trail his tormented soul straight through the cold iron prison gates and hound him behind bars forever?